Hey everyone, welcome to Whole Artist Mastery. I'm Marianne Mitchell, and in this video we're going to talk about the last phase of the 4 phases that make what I call whole art. Art that engages you intellectually, art that makes you feel on a deeper level, and how the physicality of the medium and the way the artist uses their tools to convey the emotional and intellectual connection. So, how do you know when your painting is finished? That's really what resolution is all about. I go through what I call compositional checkpoints, and these are checkpoints that I have developed over the years in my own quest to figure out why paintings seem finished and why some paintings seem unfinished, and what is it that makes a painting finished. So we're going to go through those compositional checkpoints, and actually the most important checkpoint is the last one. Throw out all the checkpoints, checkpoint. How does a painting make you feel? Could you look at it for a really long time? Every time you look at it, do you see something different, or are you engaged in a different way? Is there this indescribable, wow, I don't know why I like this, I just do? Well, for me, this painting is in that category. So I'm going to go through the other checkpoints with you so that you can see how I arrived at the checkpoint of throw out all the other checkpoints, and knowing that this painting just has this resonant quality for me. So the first checkpoint that I talk about, or that I think about when I'm going through this process, is what I call the Quadrant Check. So that's when you divide a painting into 4 quadrants. And opposite diagonal quadrants need to have relationships with each other. So what does that mean? We have 5 elements in visual language: line, color, shape, value, and texture. So within those 5 elements, there should be relationships between at least one of those elements in diagonally opposite quadrants. For instance, in this case, let's pick color. So here there's this gray, bluish gray color. And up here, it also exists. Now keep in mind, this is not necessarily just corner to corner. So this is in the upper left quadrant, and this is in the upper or lower right quadrant. But they are in different parts of each quadrant. But they still pull your eye from one to the other. And if you knock out one of them, the other one stands out. Another example would be, let's say, line. So line can be parallel line or opposite, in other words, perpendicular. So here, this line is coming across here, and in the lower left quadrant, and in the upper right quadrant, there's another straight-ish line that's vertical. So they are talking to each other. And again, without one, the other one will stand out more. Let's see, what else? We have some texture right here, which is reflected in the texture down here. And those are, I guess, the main quadrant checkpoints, the main quadrant relationships that I see in this particular painting. The next quadrant, or the next checkpoint, is what I call the division checkpoint. That's where I divide a painting down the middle vertically in half. So hold up your hand and knock out the right side of the painting as you're seeing in this video. Look at the left side as a painting unto itself. If the left side reads as a whole composition in and of itself, then it's working. Then switch and hold up your hand and knock out the left side. Looking at the right side. If that is equally engaging as the left side, that means that they are in play with each other and that your eye is moving around the whole composition in a dynamic way. If one of the sides is less interesting than the other, then the side that's less interesting or that's holding your attention a lot less is where you still need to do some work in the composition. Now, I want to make it clear that less interesting can mean really, really busy or with nothing at all. You can have a side where there's less going on that's equally as interesting as the side where there's a lot more going on. But they each have to have something that relates to each other. So in this case, we have, if we divide this down the middle, on the left side, we have pretty much the same kind of experiences on the right side. The difference is that on the left side is this bright orange, and on the right side is the bright orange over here. The next compositional checkpoint is what I call the doorstop checkpoint. That's where you have a particular area in the composition that keeps your eye from moving around the whole composition in a dynamic way. The whole point of this is to have a composition that's dynamic, that creates a movement for your whole eye, your whole being to experience the whole painting, as opposed to a static composition where you're moving back and forth and you're not moving around the whole painting. Now, this is an interesting composition because it's almost static in that it's pretty much the same on both sides, but there are little tiny elements that shift your eye around the whole painting. In terms of a doorstop here, the reason why this dark area is not a doorstop is because it's flanked by the lightest values in the whole painting. So they pull you out of the darkest value in the whole painting. Another one of the compositional checkpoints is what I call the host and guest checkpoint. And this is something I learned when I was studying in China. The host is the dominant element and the guest is the subordinate element, which they can be interchangeable. So, in other words, I remember hearing Yo-Yo Ma speak in an interview about his experience being a visitor in Minneapolis, or actually it was St. Paul, Minnesota. And when he was there, he was the guest of St. Paul, Minnesota, and St. Paul was the host city. But when he got up on the stage to play his concert, he then became the host and the audience became the guest. At the end of the concert, when he left the stage, the roles shifted. And that is what happens in composition, that they can switch back and forth. So in this case, this is the largest shape right here, but it's also the lightest and most ethereal area in the entire painting. So that is holding this dark, almost square-ish kind of area here. But because this is the darkest value in the whole piece and it's very concentrated, this also could be what I call the star of the show or the dominant element or the host. And this could be the guest. And so they're working back and forth to be interchangeable between what's dominant and what's subordinate. And everybody can see these relationships differently. Again, going back to the last compositional checkpoint, which is throw out all the checkpoints, checkpoint. How does the painting make you feel? So for me, this painting is really an ethereal and mystical representation of a physical and emotional place within inside me, as well as having been in the Taos, Santa Fe, New Mexico area, which is a landscape that I feel particularly a connection to. And so the colors and the handling of the paint really, and as well as the shapes, are informed by that exterior landscape, which for me reflect my interior landscape. So for me, I could look at this painting and see different things and feel slightly differently every time I experience it. So that's how you start to understand and determine whether your painting is finished. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to my Whole Artist Mastery YouTube channel. And while you're doing these things, head on over to the website, put in your email, and in return, you'll get a free booklet with all kinds of interesting things, including the outline for the compositional checkpoints, so you can employ them when you're trying to figure out if your painting is finished or not. The other thing we have that I'm really excited about is now we have 3 pre-recorded classes for you to enjoy at your own leisure in terms of how much time in your own home. We have one on color, we have one on visual grammar, and we have one about getting into the realm of abstraction with oil pastel. I hope that you'll look them up and enjoy them. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.